Well, a new event has been taking over the Elite Dangerous airwaves as of late, and an interesting one indeed. On the 28th of August 2025, a post was made by Frontier on Twitter containing a just 7-second long clip featuring a listening post somewhere in the Milky Way, accompanied by text reading, "A secret to be uncovered, a trail to be followed." Now, of course, the Elite community is perhaps one of the most intelligent around, and I have no idea how they do this, but perhaps unsurprisingly, they found it less than 3 hours later with nothing more than the stars in the sky featured in the video. It's a comms beacon located in the Junkarara star system, and it's at this point a spoiler warning is in order. But if you're familiar with the way Elite does these kind of events, at first this seemed like a typical breadcrumb trail. Scan the beacon, get an encoded log, community decrypts it, and it leads somewhere else. But this particular log proved to be very difficult to decode. In fact, no progress would be made on it until a message was received in commanders' inboxes from a Professor Frank Radix asking for help finding Terry Tora, a renowned exobiologist who was on the verge of uncovering, quote, something big, until they went missing nearly a month prior. Radix asks the commander to search in a 10 light-year radius of Col 285, Sector TQ-A, B15-4 for a comms beacon. Of the 5 systems within that radius, Junkarara is one of them. Upon rescanning the beacon, the previously encoded message was decoded, and within it is some very interesting stuff. Prof, I'm leaving these messages encrypted from here. I can't let what I'm about to attempt get found out. Don't frown, but I've dragged 2 of your newest students, Alex and Alicia, with me to help me track this down. This is too important to exoscience. I'm following the trail to the next system, encoding the location. A mirror would come in handy. Something of serious note here is those 2 names, Alex and Alicia. In the original message, the only name that was present was Alex. And as you would expect, anytime a new mystery or cryptic event happens in-game, the immediate joke everyone makes is that it's Raxla, a mystery that spans real-life decades. Back when the original Elite released in 1984, it came with a 48-page novella called Elite: The Dark Wheel. One of the main characters has the name Alex Ryder, so as you can imagine, everyone started joking around about this being the Alex Ryder, but what's made everyone double take here is that second name, Alicia. See, in the original novella, Alex Ryder is searching for the murderers of his father, Jason. He's mentored by a person named Rafe Zetter, a member of the Dark Wheel organization. Rafe partners Alex with a clone named Alicia Fields. And before we jump into any kind of crazy conclusions here, it's totally possible and probably the case that this is just a reference Frontier threw in here as a nod to the original game. Unless the last names are revealed, I wouldn't think too much into this. And even if they do have the same names, retcons are not at all a rarity around here. But from this point, the more typical format for these breadcrumb trails takes place. The binary at the bottom of the message, decoded, leads to a crashed Type 9 in the Al-Barib system. The data core contains another log left by Alex saying they were targeted by pirates. He leaves behind a transmission from Terry that, once decrypted, leads to the Tarat system, where there is a settlement comms beacon that mentions the October Consortium, and this is something noteworthy. Lexi October, the head of the October Consortium, sponsored a community goal 6 real-life years ago to save the company Supratech from bankruptcy. Supratech is the manufacturer of the Artemis suit, designed specifically for exobiology. The log also mentions 2 megaships belonging to the consortium performing a science expedition, and Terry is planning on sneaking aboard one of them, as they are going to the same place she wants to. This log leads to the Zirianor system, which has another beacon that leads to the Upanocles system, which reveals a portion of the flight manifest left behind by Terry. Following that, the 2 megaships belonging to the consortium are found, the Orion and the Cygnus. The names are a reference to the Orion Cygnus arm, a real-life galactic structure of the Milky Way in which we, here on Earth, are located. The Cygnus had its initial placement in the Nukamba system, and the Orion in HR 6524. Scraping the full manifest off of the Cygnus, we can see almost the full scope of the consortium's expedition via the log uplink. The Orion's uplink reveals a log left behind by what I assume to be the captain, complaining that the Cygnus is late again, calling the Cygnus's captain sloppy. And it also mentions a rendezvous at Col 359, Sector AE-9, B9-4. If you were to travel there, a final beacon is ready to be scanned. Prof, I've asked my contact to drop this beacon. I'm going to try to get off the ship undetected while they're conducting more scans. They've had this place permit locked for years, and I've no idea who they are, but it's clear the October Consortium has something to do with it. Otherwise, how else could they get past the permit lock? I'm not sure how long I'll be able to stay without being discovered, but from my initial scans, I think I've stumbled onto something that will blow your mind. Now, throughout this entire trail, you've been getting various messages from the professor, but this one mentions a permit-locked system nearby, probably being the system of interest containing this so-called mind-blowing discovery. Taking a look at the nav panel, we can see HIP 87621, currently permit-locked just over 12 light-years away. At this point, all that's left to do is wait for the Cygnus to work its way through the flight path and rendezvous with the Orion and see what happens next. And it's at this point some very odd stuff starts happening. Instead of the Cygnus jumping line by line to the itinerary, it began jumping erratically just hours after its discovery, disappearing for many hours at a time, appearing in the Grapheus system twice, and completely skipping Vajrakamana. Over the course of 5 days, it's gone all the way to, as of this recording, reaching Col 395 Sector AE-9B9-4. The Orion during this time period has been basically just sitting in HR 6524, not moving. Ironically, at this stage, the Cygnus is ahead of the Orion, and we are currently awaiting the Orion to catch up. Server instability was pretty prevalent during the initial discovery of the megaships, and players weren't sure if this weird behavior coming out of the Cygnus was intentional or a bug. But Frontier confirmed themselves that everything is functioning as intended, so something is going on here that is yet unexplained. Frontier has actually been pretty vocal during this whole thing, mentioning that there is more than just credits in store for this event. The typical rewards were given out, millions of credits and a few cosmetics, but the focus on exobiology has a lot of people very, very curious, as exobio is a gameplay loop that has been pretty untouched for years, excluding some rebalances in pay and rank requirements. The most recent notable exobio-related event I can think of was a yet undiscovered specimen finally being sampled within the last year, but I have no idea if that was a new sample or if it was something the community has been looking for since Odyssey's launch. And as it stands right now, it's kind of all down to that permit-locked star system. Of course, that leaves us with the questions, what's in it? What's all of this leading to? Is it an exobiology update? Is this the next major narrative chapter? What's the POI in the system gonna look like? How long is this gonna last for? Well, I was originally going to make this video after the event concluded, but a couple major developments just happened recently and I had to talk about it because it sent the community into a frenzy of speculation. Within all of these messages you've gotten from the professor, one of them mentions that there aren't any cartographic maps of the system available. Well, that turns out not to be entirely accurate. I'd been paying attention to the Canon Discord throughout all of this, as well as others, and started seeing people mention fleet carriers selling the system data of HIP 87621, and screenshots of the system map started flying around, and I had to find out if this was real or some kind of troll, so I went to a fleet carrier, reported to have the data, opened my gal map and clicked the system, and to my surprise, the cartographic data was available to purchase and the system map became visible. Now, I should note here that there is really no guarantee that this is what the system will even look like when we finally get access to it, assuming we do at all. This could be a mistake or even some kind of red herring, but Frontier in the past has acknowledged sometimes these little things that look like oversights are actually intentional, so it really could go either way here. And what we found in this system has honestly been really weird, especially considering another thing that happened after this system map's discovery. But let's start there first. For an event so heavily focused on exobiology, the system we're all waiting to see apparently contains no landable atmospherics at all, which is required for exobiology to exist. Commander Meccan, a prominent community member, has a theory that the rings may contain some new form of exobiology. Perhaps it could even be related to the new mining ship coming to the game with a unique module. The thing is that ship's formal reveal happened recently, and that special module is kind of just like a rapid-fire mining laser, so I personally don't really think it has anything to do with the ship or the module, although the rings could totally have something to them, and honestly, the system itself is pretty unique. It contains 4 ringed gas giants. One of them explicitly states it contains water-based life. There's also a ringed water world that is quite rare and also explicitly states it has carbon water-based life. But my personal theory isn't really about those planets. I don't really think FDev has the resources to add full-scale water worlds to Elite, at least yet. So if these planets do end up being the point of interest, I don't think the discovery would be something we get to actually see explicitly, unless it really does have to do with those rings. at least in my opinion. Now, a friend of mine has had a theory for a while now that the next big step in Elite Stellar Forge would probably be something like heavier atmospheric worlds. See, when Elite Dangerous initially released, landing on planets wasn't a thing until the Horizons expansion, which added non-atmospheric landable worlds. And when Odyssey released, light atmospherics with exobiology became explorable. So it seems Frontier has historically been basically releasing new planets in the order of their complexity. Planets incapable of supporting any atmosphere, and thus life itself, were added first. And then those with light atmospherics, only capable of supporting the scannable plants and such we're all used to, came next. Intuitively, the heavier atmospheric worlds could theoretically come after that. And I assume their surface tech on those planets would be very similar, if not identical, to that of the light atmospheres. The tech responsible for the look of the atmosphere, I imagine, wouldn't change that much either. And the only thing truly new is a fresh suite of biology to discover. Maybe little creatures running around, or some light foliage, or maybe both. What makes me the most confident in this theory is that the only planet sitting in the system that has an atmosphere and would meet that criteria is this one single heavier atmospheric world. It kind of sticks out. It's pretty small, has an oxygen atmosphere, and has a mostly rocky surface with a small percentage of metal, less than 10%. This kind of planet surface we've seen before in Elite, and it would just be the exobiology itself that would be new on this planet. Now, of course, that's just a theory. It's way more likely something happens that none of us expect, and it's totally possible this entire system changes when whatever is meant to happen happens. Now, how long we have to wait is still unclear, but we got a bit more context into how long that might be. A community goal started in relation to this event, and it publicly confirmed that that HIP system is the one we're looking at. It also narratively contextualized this event being some big public thing now, spreading to the community at large, and Zachary Rackham, a pretty familiar character to anyone that's played Elite before, is sponsoring the community goal and wants people to scan high metal content worlds and sell the data to him. In exchange for, like, you know, the typical community goal stuff, you can get a pre-engineered surface scanner if you want. And that's a little weird to me. Unless I'm stupid, which is totally possible and maybe even likely, there aren't any high metal content worlds in the system. All of their metal contents are less than 10%, and the 90% is rocky. The rings are high metal content, but that's about it. And what's really kind of thrown a wrench into my theory about it being heavier atmospheric worlds is the fact that the terminology anomalous exobiological signals was used in the Galnet article. Anomalous, you know, would kind of entail that it's different and weird, and it wouldn't be weird at all for a heavier atmosphere to have exobiology on it. That would be completely expected, so kind of makes me doubt my theory a little bit. Here's the thing. I do think whatever this update is going to be a reasonably substantial one that has to do with exploration. And here's why. At the beginning of next year, the Distant Worlds 3 community event begins. Distant Worlds is legendary amongst the community and is one of the events that's wider known in the gaming sphere outside of Elite's community. One hasn't been hosted since before Odyssey was released, since before fleet carriers were released. It would be a slam dunk on Frontier's end to add new exploration content right as the biggest exploration event possibly ever kicks off that everyone is going to want to take part in. The feature coming at the end of the year is like kind of perfectly timed right before that event, so maybe this is leading up to that new feature, although it is a little weird that the community goal ends literally the day before the new mining ship releases. It's kind of feeling like a mesh, like a kind of in-between a Halloween event and the new feature. It might not be either though. I have no idea. This event is kind of one of the weirdest ones I've seen in my playtime here in Elite, and I would love to hear your theories down in the comments, but I gotta get this video done. It's been in the works way too long, and well, now that there's a bit of a break and we have to wait for this community goal to end, we really won't know for a little while, so it's time to speculate, and there will be plenty of that. Something also interesting about the Galnet article is that it mentioned the 37 light year radius that has been cut off for colonization, which is a weirdly specific number, and it's weird that they mention it in the Galnet article to me. I don't know if that holds any significance. Again, that's for the comments, that's for the speculation, that's for the discords. We'll see what everyone has to say. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this video. I'm really excited to see what happens next, because honestly, it's been forever since new exploration content has been added to the game, and I think there's going to be something new coming soon. It would be weird for it to be the asteroids, because what does Super Tech have to do with that? Super Tech's the Artemis suit people. Literally, specifically, on-foot content is what that company deals with. But if it is the rings, how's that gonna, I don't know. Thank you for watching. I'll see you around.